All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Episode 6.
Okay.
All right. So we've gotten some more stuff with the Empire, specifically Kirchheis and Reinhardt and his sister.
And the assassination of Maximilian Kastrop.
Yes. Julius Caesar was never meant to rule the Roman Empire in this world line.
Exactly.
And yes, he was stabbed 37 times because that's what is necessary.
But the Fizan Dominion was behind it.
Yeah, Fijan.
Fijan.
But yes, it's spelled that way.
The fuzzy Dominion. No.
Yes,
no.
The place of war profiteering Lex Luthor, bald-looking mother. Yeah, that guy. And he's definitely manipulating things way more intimately than we gave him credit for. We also got introduced to a slew of new vice admirals.
Indeed.
Some of them we had already been introduced to, but there's more like reestablishing where they fit within Reinhardt's fleet. And meanwhile, Yang's thinking strategy.
That's right.
As he do.
He's got to take the Echelon Fortress, which might be what we're getting this episode, because they mentioned it in the previous episode that was something that we were working on.
Possibly. Yeah. I would like for him to just quote Sun Tzu and just say, it is stupid to attack a walled city. And then just be like, we're going to not to do that. And then they just like... It's like a whole fleet goes towards the Echelon Fortress, and they're like, assemble the entire Imperial fleet at the Echelon Fortress. They just stand out there waiting. Meanwhile, another Alliance fleet goes in and attacks the place that all those other fleets were like called to.
Yep.
And it's just like, haha, your walled city.
Right.
What are you going to do?
Management.
You're going to sortie from it? Wow, that sounds really smart. You should do that. So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this.
All right. We got a lot of characters being introduced, a lot of stakes being set up, and now the plan to take Isolon is underway.
Yeah, and it's, I think something that we kind of expected was that if they were to do it, it wouldn't be necessarily through some clever, like, ship maneuvering. They would have to get inside. They would have to find
because
some way.
That's why it's dumb to attack a walled city, is because you can't use, like, maneuvering tactics and stuff, except for getting inside. Because what do you do?
So subterfuge, sabotage, with only 200 men.
Right.
So
now they're on the inside and they're super badass elite fighters.
But are they actually going to be able to do too much? Because you can't do a hostile takeover. Because obviously this place is one where it's essentially a small planet. Like, it's a small... It's no moon. It's a space station. But, when in, Star Wars you had, our motley crew from the Millennium Falcon go in, the only way they were able to even get their ship out of the way was because they had a space wizard walking around doing, like, minor bits of mind control. And, like, force stealth, essentially.
Right. Here's my prediction of how they're going to do it. Because the problem that they have, even if they manage to get inside, there's still 15,000 Empire ships and only 2,000 Alliance ships. That's not the kind of thing that you can just tactics your way out of. Right.
What it's going to be is the Thor hammer. The big freaking gun that fire on their own fleet.
Yep. The 200 will go in. They'll figure out a way to get control of that. Yang will do the same thing of basically draw the fleet out, and they'll be like, we're so many of us, we're going to go out and crush you. And then they get blasted.
By their own weapon.
Yep.
And then it's not really a question of whether or not they actually have enough ships to take it. They just demand their surrender.
Right. Yeah. But the thing is that 2,000 ships is still a ton. So if they're not being opposed, right, if they don't have anyone to stand against them, they could probably take it, and then they immediately need to be like, back up, Imperials, back up. Like, we won't be able to hold this place very long if we don't get help.
Well, that's my worry here, is that if there starts to become any kind of hostile takeover of what have you in the Isolon Fortress, is it going to be a question of whether or not Admiral Siecht and Admiral Stockhausen will have some kind of bickering over how to handle the situation once they realize that they're actually under a serious threat here. Will one of them be like, we need to send for reinforcements now?
Right.
Or the other one's like, no, we can handle this. We don't want to undermine our position.
I think what they may end up wanting to do is that, like, if they don't have the numbers to be able to just take out the fortress themselves with the 200 inside, and opening the gates won't do anything, so they need to take the gun. But in order to take the gun, they need to do it in a very short amount of time when the fleet of 15,000 is already out there. That way they can take it over and fire.
Which requires communication to understand when that is actually happening.
Right, which might just be when the next time you see the 15,000, leave, like, the next time the fleet moves out.
They have to see that.
Right, exactly. So figure out a way to keep tabs on the goings-on and then move all at that moment.
And my other thing that I'm slightly worried about is that the Knights of the Rose, while they're a cool, like, concept and idea, we don't know how many of them there are. So there might be actual Alliance people in there that are dressed as Imperials, and the Knights of the Rose are just the main people leading the whole thing.
Potentially, although I get the feeling it's probably, like, you wouldn't want this to be something that has a bunch of disjointed units. Like, you would want it to be people that all work together regularly. That way there's no breakdown in coordination and stuff, because this is something that, like,
but they're all humans. There's nothing really to separate an Imperial from an Alliance person by look or what have you, right?
Oh yeah, right. I mean,
it's all the same. They're all underneath. They all were probably underneath the same empire at one point. So
right, but I think the point of the Knights of the Rose is that it's almost a way that the Alliance can keep tabs on which ones are exiles, because they have them in this sort of disposable, all grouped together, cordoned off kind of unit. And then in order for them to basically survive, they either defect back to the Empire, or they do a really good job.
Right. Which many have defected back to the Empire.
Right.
Which they've already brought this up, and I'm glad that they did already in episode 6, because this is something I think I brought up in a discussion a while ago, was the idea that the main way you would actually do any serious kind of damage across borders is you would just have someone not really change sides, but just change their living situation.
Sure.
Oh no, we're part of a different group of we're from a planet that was just wiped out. We need help.
Yeah.
They end up getting recovered, and then over the next decade, you slowly but surely integrate yourself and wait for that proper moment and do your thing.
Now, the fact that they introduced the Iserlon corridor, and that the Iserlon fortress is not just an important fortress, but that this is the only real way that the Empire and the Alliance can get at each other, that does change a lot from the standpoint of, there wouldn't be too many, like, because one of the big problems with space is how do you get a concept of territory, right? Because you can fly anywhere. Now, thankfully, there's no light speed, right? So they don't have to worry about that.
Probably why the corridor actually is a choke point, is that there's no way for them to traverse the emptiness of space.
Sure.
Without getting fueled or something like that. Or it would take way too long.
Yeah, and it's probably one of those things where it's like, you can come through here, or you can go through the other places. If you go through the other places, we'll be able to see you coming from a ridiculous amount away, right? I was about to say a mile, but that doesn't really work in space,
exactly.
And then you lose, right? Plus, space is a mean place. There's lots of stuff that can go bad.
I'm surprised that they're willing to simplify the conflict in this way for such a large-scale story.
Oh, yeah.
To make it be a point of, this Iserlon fortress is the primary focal point for every attack from the Alliance. Now, the Empire can sortie out from the Iserlon fortress and attack theoretically anywhere in the Alliance, kind of general system, territory. And then when they need to retreat, they just, sally back to the Iserlon fortress, and the Alliance is like, crap, we can't.
Right, exactly.
Can't engage that. Yeah. So, given that the Iserlon fortress is such a big thing, that means it has to eventually get taken.
Right.
So that the conflict can open up to be something bigger.
And that's probably what Yang's going to do here, and that's where the truly raging galactic conflict is going to start.
Right.
Because if it doesn't become, let's sue for peace or whatever, let's have peace for a bit, then it's about to get crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be cool to have it be a point of contention constantly, though, rather than have the typical way, which is, I would say it's almost a bit too easy to do this, and is make the Alliance just the good guys, and once they've taken the Isolon Fortress, they don't never have to lose it, you know?
But because we have protagonists on both sides, it's, Isolon Fortress has been captured. Hey, Reinhardt, we know you're really smart. Can you, do something about this, please?
Can you take it back?
Can you take it back? I suppose. Siegfried, go take it back.
Commander, I think this, or Your Excellency, or
I think this might require a bit more forces. Okay, fine. Well, I'll go.
I guess I'll dedicate 20,000 ships.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that and that's where and one of the cool things about this is that because again with space, like when I think about something like say Star Wars, right?
Right.
There's the whole each planet is a single ecosystem kind of a thing that is a way to sort of make it feel like you can get a grasp on the galaxy as a whole, even though each planet should be as complex as our own, right? And then trying to think about dozens of planets and things like that, or much less hundreds or thousands or millions, right? Yeah. It's too big.
It's too much.
Right, it's too much. But by having there be this focal point of the Isolon Fortress, we can have recurring battles here. We can have the scope of basically what's happening change, where you go to a place and you remember when it was nice and peaceful, right? And it's still a military installation, but either the fortress or planets beyond, right? And then suddenly no, they've been ravaged by war. They're it's not pretty landscapes anymore. It's craters and smoke and and ash, right?
That's the other thing, is that given that this is a war that no one really wants to win because there's corruption, because there's people like the Fijan
Dominion,
system, Dominion, what have you, manipulating things on both sides to keep the battle from getting too, for the war from getting too one-sided. Capture of the Isolon Fortress would be something that would set those types of people into a little bit of a panic, because then they go, well, wait a minute, we have to adjust a bunch of things here, because if anything, we were tempering the Empire from just winning because they have this choke point here. And then we were stopping the Alliance from winning too much because we don't know what would happen if they took this choke point and then snowballed through it. It's kind of like in a game of Risk when your opponent basically puts all their defensive stuff, all their guys, on one border spot.
Right, like Iceland or something.
Yeah, so you're attacking from Iceland into Greenland or what have you, from Greenland into Iceland. And then they only have one guy in all the other places.
Right.
So once they get through that, it just boom, 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 boom.
And I feel like the Isolon Fortress is the equivalent of when you have North America and Europe in Risk, right? None of the other places are really taken, but then Europe has basically posted a bunch of guys in Greenland, and the person in North America is just like, why? Why must you do this to me?
You mean Iceland, though?
No. Which potato, reverse whichever one you're thinking about. Basically, where you have the foothold in that first
one
territory
continent
of the other continent,
and then you never leave.
Yeah, and then you never leave, right? And you just do that so that way they can't get full control, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Yang being tasked with this duty, and he ends up getting to meet a lot more of his fleet crew and other members of this whole thing. We have a couple recurring officers that have been, I would say, more or less kind of big deals in his kind of daily setup. I think the main one,
Sidney Sitolette.
That is the big
fleet admiral.
Big fleet admiral. Yes, but we have Attenborough. That's one of his friends there. We have Cazelnu.
Yep.
Which, if I remember correctly, I'm going back to the movies here.
Cazelnu is a rear admiral.
Cazelnu is a rear admiral, and he is not from any of the movies. Okay.
Or maybe he was, but he is now basically the same rank as Yang. Whereas previous Attenborough was like his buddy that was, his peer. Now it seems to be shifting more to Cazelnu.
Yes, that's right. But we met Greenhill's daughter.
Yes.
Which is Greenhill the one that was with him in Overture to a New War?
I don't...
Or My Conquest of the Sea of Stars.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so.
Which officer was basically the one that was basically being a dick to him?
Right. I don't believe so. I could be wrong. That but we did see so there were two people with three people potentially with the last name Greenhill. There was Chief of Staff Greenhill, and his daughter is, I didn't catch her name, but Yang's new aide. Frederica? Okay.
I believe.
But then there was Admiral Dwight Greenhill, who was with Sidney Sittelet at a point. So I'm not sure if that's like two different titles, but they both apply to the same person, or if that like
no, I think it's different. I think that it's a huge military family essentially.
Okay, yeah, because they mentioned the Chief of Staff, but we didn't actually see the Chief of Staff. So unless it's the Dwight person, because we also didn't get their first name. So yeah.
Yeah, so where is her name given?
Here we go. Yeah.
Frederica, yep. Lieutenant Junior.
Frederica.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Frederica Greenhill.
Gotcha.
She's a lieutenant.
Cool.
Gotcha. And she was someone that he saved in the evacuation of El Facil. So that makes sense, is that, from the Iserlon fortress, they've been able to attack with not impunity, but basically having a support structure to fall back on in case their attacks get rebutted by the Alliance fleets.
And they have never gotten pushed back past the Iserlon fortress. So,
right, and that can create a little bit of a false sense of security.
Oh, definitely. When
you have this impregnable choke point.
Yep.
Now,
because what happens if suddenly you're wrong and it's not impregnable?
Right. What I see as being a big deal here is that this character is one that is tied to a military kind of family of sorts. She has an emotional connection to Yang because of the way not only he saved her and her family, he also was someone that she was able to help in that immediate moment there.
And she could see how wholly dedicated he was to helping people, not just her. Yeah,
exactly. But also that he was human.
Yeah.
He was choking on a sandwich, and she gave him some coffee.
And he said, "Oh, tea really would have been better." Yeah,
so he's had all these moments of candor and candid candor.
Yeah.
That's what I mean to say. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I probably just forgot what candor means.
Yeah, but yeah, he's all this candidness with regards to not only interacting with civilians, how he regards some of the other members of the military.
Sure.
He is respectful, I would say, to his peers for the most part, but even then he is a little bit trite and a little bit sarcastic.
Oh, yeah.
But then when he's doing the speech, can we talk about that speech really quick?
Sure. The speech. It was a speech.
He basically
sacrifice fatherland.
Yeah, he basically just did the rah. Yeah.
Like, that was
patriotism for the fatherland, risking life. No, why? Because we can only drink good tea while we're living.
Life needs things to live. Like, oh man.
Follow me if you want to not die.
Right. This was so great.
Everybody, let's fight so we don't die. This is something that I wonder if it's never happened before, or it's that this is how monolithic the power structure is in the Alliance, that they never hear voices like this broadcast on this level.
Sure.
So the structure is so singular and focused.
The way Trinit was looking at him, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill this guy. like it really did straight up just make me think of Homelander from The Boys, just being like, you fucking got like, oh man, oh, that was so good. That was so good. Like, I love that scene. Because with this show. And with the whole idea of this show, whenever you're talking about people that are leading millions of people into battle, right? That's so big that you almost can fall into this weird trap, not necessarily, but almost like if you're wanting it to be as realistic as possible,
right,
you can fall into the trap of all the characters being kind of the same, because the variations are so minute that you don't necessarily notice them, because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten into that position in the first place, right?
Like right now, we're taking notes on the hair color of the admirals so that we can separate them from that. And they're smart enough to realize, hey, guys, people aren't going to be able to tell the difference between the Obersteins, the Mittermeiers, and the Fahrenheits. And
I think I'm starting to
the Kemps, the Bittenfelds, the Mecklingers, the Wallens, the Lutzes, the Vogels,
the Captain Paul von Oberstein, yes, and things like that. But the point is that in these situations that we have for these characters, they give specific non-traditional reasons for how they got into this position that they're in right now.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to go through the regular ringer, because otherwise they would, in order to make it through, they would need to be different people, right? Yeah. So in the case of Yang, exceptional circumstances and someone that he pissed off, right? That is constantly pushing him further into the limelight, hoping that he'll fail. And a similar thing with Reinhardt, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, like, oh man, something like this, something like someone that would give speeches like this, probably wouldn't have never made it here in the first place. But because he knows that TrueNet is pissed at him already, doesn't really matter if he says something like that, because he's already tried to get him killed and, and sent his personal goons to his house, right? So, whatever. Right. He's already sending him to die, so why not own it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things where it's this beautiful poetry for the characters like TrueNet and like the people on the Imperial side that are trying to set up Reinhardt.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing that you do when you officially make someone your enemy like that. Right?
Uh-huh.
They can go for any kind of blow they want.
Right.
And because they're based on because the person that's trying to take them out, their power base is based on officiality and all that stuff, even if they have enough power to sort of like strong arm people and whatnot.
Right.
They do kind of need to keep up appearances.
Yes.
And that's not something the person you're going after has to do.
Mm-hmm. We got to meet kind of the people that are at the commander's kind of, bridge table, essentially. Of Yang's, we have Petorikev, Fyodor Petorikev. If you want to take these down,
sure.
Yeah, it's more. There's only a couple here. We already got Fisher.
Yeah.
That's
Commodore Edwin Fisher.
He's basically the one that they've got in charge of the fleet deployment, specifically for the 13th Fleet here. Commodore is basically someone like a group leader, essentially, not an admiral.
What was the name of the actual leader of the Rosenreiter?
We might not have his name written down. We might have to go back to the beginning. But I wanted to. Okay, I can do that really quick. But I wanted to, before we even got to that. I wanted to talk about, or got into this bit where they defend the
waitress.
The waitress. Oh, Schenkop. That's right, Schenkop. Colonel Walter von Schenkop. But yeah, when they have the conversation regarding Yang's trust of the Knights of the Rose, what I find to be rather interesting here is he asks him, like, what's your objective?
Yes.
Because what's interesting here is there's the obvious answer is like, do you even know why we're here? We're here to take Isolon Fortress. So he's obviously not asking about what is this fleet's objective.
But
he says, Yang, what is your objective? And he says, I want to retire.
Yeah, which is great for so many reasons. Because on the one hand, the fact that he's asking him this question, he's an ex-Empire guy, so he knows how it is in the Empire, where it's very much each person trying to do their own thing, But then it's also wanting to retire. That's the opposite of what most Imperial guys are after.
Right. But what I like, actually, that's really almost kind of depressing about this.
Oh, yeah?
Is that Yang says, well, the other reason why I trust you is that if he turns traitor, they'll say I was no judge of character. Then I'll be forced to retire.
Yeah.
Meaning that if I win or lose, I'm retiring either way.
Yep.
So...
And that's...
And it says the one-man hero will disappear from this world. And what's and that's the other thing. the other thing when they were talking about the situation here, this guy Murai here kind of rejects that. Hey, Admiral, and what was the one in charge of fleet deployments?
Oh, that was Fisher.
Commodore that's right. Fisher. Fisher then says, well, the Admiral has left all the fleet deployments to me, which means that all the credit for the strategic tactical movements of the fleet with regards to that stuff is going to fall to this guy. So the only thing he's getting really credit for is the infiltration group here. Like, he's obviously going to make decisions with the fleet and delegate that, not delegate, but kind of communicate that to the Commodore here. So that's going here. But then he says, what's your objective in this battle? Is it glory or promotion? And he's like, no. It's like, I'm already being called Your Excellency before the age of 30, and that's kind of nice. Yeah. But if I'm still alive after this battle, I intend to retire, which is regardless of winning or losing.
Right.
And this is coming from the guy that has a lot of disillusionment with the Alliance. He doesn't have a lot of, like, rah, patriotism, yeah. He's just like, yeah, war sucks. Mm-hmm. This whole thing sucks. And I'd love to end it. Yeah. And this is a way that it could end. Mm-hmm. But if it doesn't, yeah, he's kind of already predicted in some ways how this is not going to work out for him. Well, because he does succeed probably. Mm-hmm. He does end up in a position where even if the infiltration thing doesn't lead to a total takeover of the Isolon fortress, let's say, it was a successful infiltration thus far. Right. Even if let's say Reinhardt shows up, and they end up pushing the fleet away. Yeah. It still ends up with a thing where it ends up being like, that went rather well. And they're like, okay, we want you to still be involved in big alliance movements. And he's like, I just want to retire.
Right, but if you keep doing well, like, your Hand of Midas thing, it's not going to, you can't just stop using it, right? Like, no, sorry, they have other plans for you.
And so I look at this as depressing because I don't think he's ever going to get this.
Oh, no.
I think this is, and then the guy says, are you saying you'll retire under the present circumstances? Right. Meaning that he's saying, like, well, no, we might be able to sue for a peace treaty with the Empire. And it might only last a decade or two. Yeah. But I'd prefer that over the total war that it would lead to. But yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something?
Just what you just said. Yeah. Just the idea that he's aware enough that basically, war ending forever? No,
that's never happened.
Few decades? Yeah,
that has happened in the past.
That's happened in the past, and that'd be a pretty sweet deal. Like, that would be a pretty sweet deal.
In fact, there's plenty of times in history where certain regions of the world, no large-scale conflicts for a long period of time. Yep, like quite a while. And while when we look at our more recent history, it's easier to see kind of like, okay, well, there was this period of time where, peace as far as regards to, this country or what have you, it was only last for a certain period of time. But that wasn't the case all over the world. It's, localized and stuff. You end up getting peace in plenty of places.
Yes. And it's... Yang and Reinhardt are such unbelievable polar opposites. Because because on the one hand, Reinhardt's like, I want the universe, right? It's like okay,
oh boy,
there. Yeah,
oh kid,
all right. Let's see what kind of sacrifices are gonna have to be made along the way. But
okay, go ahead.
But then for Yang, he's literally like, I don't want to be doing this, guys. I don't want to be doing this. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, that's going to absolutely guarantee his troops' loyalty. Yeah. While making them have faith in him, that might be another thing, because he's not painting some grand vision, right? The idea that they can trust him, right? That's at least something they can take to the bank, right? Mm-hmm. Even now, there could be a potential issue where it's like, hey, but what if the war doesn't end and you still retire? We'll still have to fight. I don't know how we feel about that, not under you, because we won't do as well. But whatever. But it's not one of those things where he's after personal power, right? It's glory, exactly. It's the farthest thing from what he wants, which is probably very refreshing.
Yeah, my final thing with this is that because he wants the ideal, the ideal that, we just win this battle, we get the choke point, there's no reason for the Alliance then to feel the pressure to then strike back with a vengeance, but they're totally going to. So we can just sue for peace. And in some ways, this is interesting because if we look at the Empire's problem, the Empire's problem is that they have a different type of corruption with regards to infighting. They are too disjointed.
Yeah.
And the Alliance has the opposite problem with corruption. It's still corruption, but it's a form of unity taken to an extreme.
Yeah.
Where we have left a lot of the tenets of democracy.
Right. It's a lot more like fascist kind of a thing where
it's moving towards too much consolidation of power.
Right.
It's during times of war, we grant executive powers to the Supreme Chancellor for them.
And by the way, this war's been going on for 150 years.
Yep.
So at that
term
point,
limits are probably being extended beyond what they should be.
This is just a dictatorship, practically at this point.
It's a very comfy dictatorship at this point.
Yep.
And while I would say that there are areas in which you can see that it's not as bad as it could be, if they end up getting successful in the military side of things, it justifies some of the recent changes they've made politically.
Oh yeah.
So they'll probably be like, well, now we need to take advantage of this. So we need more power being given to the political structure so that we can quickly advance militarily. It's like, no.
Yep.
And we already know that there's people involved that are playing both sides.
Oh, yeah,
So all it takes is for the Alliance to overextend a little bit, and then all of Yang's efforts could be wasted.
Sure.
So my depressing theory is that Yang will never be able to retire.
Oh, definitely not.
Like he'll definitely have
He'll
some
retire
big,
when he's dead.
Well, he'll have some big things that will happen that he'll do.
Yep.
And in some ways, I feel like in some ways, both the main characters either have to live with kind of with an ending that's more of they hope for something greater for humanity. And they both were able to do their part for their respective factions or what have you, but they meet somehow in the middle.
Sure.
And it doesn't necessarily lead to peace, but it could. But the other ending is that they both die, and it's that they both kind of did their push to give humanity a better shot towards peace.
Martyrdom, essentially, in the annals of history.
And that's why it's called Legends of the Galactic
Right,
Heroes,
exactly, because you only become a legend after you die.
Right, yeah. I would say, though, with regards to Yang, because he wants to retire in a meta way, that means he's going to succeed a lot, though. That means in a meta way he's going to succeed a frick ton.
Yes, because that means he can't ever be given the opportunity to retire, so he has to be constantly, truly have the hand of Midas.
At
least for a long time. Until that motivation changes.
We need more of his character to come out here.
Yep.
Because right now, he's more just kind of a sarcastic git that's really smart and has a few friends and a few noble, specific intentions. But he's actually a pretty simple and slightly selfish kind of guy.
Oh, definitely selfish.
That makes sense, though.
Yep.
So I very much understand and identify a bit with Yang.
Yeah.
And that it's like, I get it. But on the other side, we have Reinhardt, who is this completely... I don't know how to relate at all to Reinhardt with this 20-year-old ambition of taking the stars in the galaxy and the universe.
Well, I think it's something that everyone has at some point. Not specifically taking the universe, but the idea of the ambition that is too big for you, right? And that's why they brought up the whole idea of the reaching for the stars, and then you realize that your arm's too short, right? But because everything has been going so well for Reinhardt, he hasn't realized that yet. And I'm guessing he probably won't until conflict happens with Kirheis, right? Until there's some point where basically all the support structures that have been helping him get this far start to weaken a bit.
Yeah, I almost feel like he can't actually have that anytime soon, though, because Yang is going to succeed so much, probably, that Reinhardt needs to have some area
have a response kind of a thing. Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't really lead to much equal forms of conflict. It leads to the Empire losing really hard, really quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't think that's gonna happen at all.
Right.
If anything, I feel like this is going to turn to intrigue probably within about 20 to 25 episodes. Like with a lot of conflict, and then it becomes actually there probably will be peace for a set amount of time, and then it will be that really awkward thing where it's peaceful, but it's actually really shady stuff going on back and forth. And both of our leading main characters are like, y'all, this isn't peace. What are you doing?
Oh, boy.
Please, like, we have to be better than this. So,
Yeah.
anyhow. Lots of predictions there. Lots of cool stuff happening. Isolon Fortress Infiltration arc. Or maybe it just happens in one episode. That would be fantastic too. But let's go, y'all. If you want to see that next episode's reaction and discussion right now, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length reactions there. And all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about other anime shows. You talk about the manga stuff we do. You can also talk with Jacob about the book that he wrote.
Yeah, I wrote a sci-fi novel. It's called Battle Lines, and it's pretty cool. And it's on Amazon. The link is in the description below. It's in both hardback and ebook, so check it out.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.